We're talking today with Mark Lindsay. He's going to be performing at Ho-Chunk Gaming, Black River Falls, along with Gary Puckett. This is coming up Sunday. A couple concerts, 3:30 and 7:30. First question for you. You've been to Western Wisconsin before, the area? If you have, what do you like about the state, about this area?
We played Wisconsin. We played Ho-Chunk a couple of times actually before, and Wisconsin, we played the Wisconsin State Fair. We've been playing in Wisconsin since the 60s, so I'm pretty familiar with the state, and the people are very friendly. It's always, we usually come in the summertime, so it's always nice weather. And, what can I say? It's good people. It's dairy country.
Have you had cheese curds here?
I have had cheese curds. Back in the 60s, I didn't. I was a little hesitant at first, but I'm ready for them now.
Yeah. Now, more appropriately, do you prefer cheese curds deep fried or the squeaky type?
The ones I had were not deep fried, so I guess they were squeaky.
Okay, then you had the more authentic ones. Either way is really good, but if you can down them when they're kind of glossy type, that's the best.
Yeah, that's and I really my palate has expanded since then, so I'm more willing to accept them today, I'm sure.
That's very good. Now, this concert, and as we speak, is coming just over a year since the passing of Paul Revere. Now, you left a note on your website, a pretty extensive posting about him, but describe for us some of, he has been quite influential on your career, obviously, but maybe go into detail some of maybe the lesser-known influences on your career and your life as a musician.
Well, when I met Paul, I was like I think 16 or 17, and he had a drive-in restaurant and a hamburger stand actually, and I was working in a bakery, and we made the buns for Paul's drive-in. But on Sunday, we didn't deliver, so he had to come and pick him up himself. It just so happened that the Saturday before Sunday, he played at the Elks Hall in Caldwell, Idaho, and I heard about the concert, so I went, and I really, really wanted to, I was in a band called Freddie Chapman and the Idaho Playboys. I was a rockabilly singer in a country band, but one of the guitar players that I was rehearsing with for Freddie lived right across the street from Paul's hamburger stand. And I could hear the guys rehearsing in there, and I thought, man, nothing but rock and roll. That's what I really want to do. So Saturday night, they have the dance, and I can go in and walk up to the stage and demand to sing a song. And they said, no. And I said, come on, I can really sing. So they let me on. I sang one song, and then walked out. And the next day, I'm at the bakery, and I'm all covered with flour. I got my thick glasses on, my baker's hat, and my baker's apron, and Revere comes in, and he's waiting for his order because I'm a little slow that morning, and he's telling me the story about this thing that happened at the dance. And you played up the street, last night, and it was a great. I said, it was a great dance, but the weirdest thing happened in the middle of the dance. This weird skinny kid came up to the stage and demanded to sing a song, and we let him. And I said, well, how was he? And he said, well, he wasn't bad. And I whipped off my hat and my glasses and my baker's hat and said, it was me. And he said, well, you're not bad. Why don't you come in and rehearse with us sometime? So I rehearsed with that band, and as it turned out, Revere left that band, and we started a partnership, and a band that became the Downbeats, and then turned into Paul Revere The Raiders, and Paul and I were partners from 1958 till, I guess, 1974.
Talking with Mark Lindsay here ahead of Sunday concerts at Ho-Chunk Gaming, Black River Falls, along with Gary Puckett. And when you were getting involved with music at this point, you went for the saxophone. Now, part of that, according to the article in the Billboard number one's book, I should say, had to do with an accident when you were really young and led to you doing sax as opposed to guitar?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to play guitar, and I bought a nice, beautiful Epiphone acoustic, and I went in to take guitar lessons, and the guy said, make an E chord. So I I made me crazy. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. He says, look, let me see your fingers. And I had the right, my left index finger, the tip of it was cut off in a lawnmower when I was 4 years old. So he looked at it and said, you can't ever play guitar. And I went, oh, crap. So I went home, and we were sitting in Revere's. You asked how he influenced my musical career. We were sitting at his drive-in, and I was sitting on a milk can, and he was working around there. And I'd been singing with the band at that time. He said, what we really need is a sax player, because everybody, listen to the Wailers and the Johnny and the Hurricanes, and everybody's got a sax, and it's really cool. So I thought, wait a minute. And I remember seeing an old sax at my grandparents' house that belonged to my uncle. So I drove out to where my grandparents lived, went to my uncle's room. He was in college, dug in the closet, got out his saxophone, figured out a way to put it together, and went, finally got it together, put the reed on, everything, went, wah, made this horrible honking sound, and said, hey, I can play this thing. So I traded my guitar in for a brand new Somewhere Mark 6, and Revere was up skiing in the call, but he said, if you want to come in and listen to music, the kitchen window is always open. So I let myself into the kitchen window and was there all weekend. By the time he came back from skiing, I'd learned most of the Champs album. My lip was bleeding. My tone was terrible. But I said, hey, here's the sax. I'm going to play it. And I pitied the people that listened to me for the first 6 months, but I got a little better after that.
How much have you played saxophone over the years up to modern time?
I still have a Silver Mark 6 tenor, Barry, alto, and tenor, and soprano. So I play off and on. The last album I did a couple of years ago, I played sax on a couple of numbers, and I play it occasionally. Not I don't take it on the road too much, but I still play off and on.
Talking with Mark Lindsay ahead of his performances at Ho-Chunk Gaming, Black River Falls. You also worked a lot with Dick Clark, and in a lot of ways been involved with Paul Revere and the Raiders, but then working with Dick Clark in terms of TV shows. There was Where the Action Is, there's Happening, there was even a bit of a bicentennial performance. How did you get continuously involved with Dick Clark, kind of going back to him over the years in the 60s into the 70s?
Well, we first got involved with Dick when the Raiders opened. We were one of a dozen acts, probably, that opened for the Rolling Stones, their first Southern California performance. And we were wearing our Revolutionary War outfits. We did 3 songs. I got up and danced on the piano. And it just so happened that one of Dick Clark's secretaries was in the audience. So she went back and told her boss, look, that show that you're thinking about doing action, well, I found this, I just ran into this real exciting, very visual group, and they come from Idaho, so they're probably going to work cheap. So our manager went to meet Dick, and he signed us up. We did the pilot, and CBS didn't like it, but ABC did, so they signed up, the show for 13 weeks. And we signed the contract with Dick for 13 weeks, and he told us later, he admitted that, he was signing these unknown guys, but we had already cut an album, so we had some music in the can that we could perform on the TV show. He said, my idea was, if the show hit in 13 weeks, we'd be able to afford a real band. Well, what happened was, it was kind of a precursor to MTV. The whole country saw us performing our songs on Where the Action Is. They liked it, and at the end of 13 weeks, we had become that band that Dick was looking for in the first place. So we did like 2.5 years on Action. Then Paul and I did a show called Happening, and then Happening 68. And we, it was a wonderful relationship. And I've got to, thank Dick. He was really responsible for a lot of certainly the exposure to the whole country at once of Paul Revere The Raiders.
And then you end up with the #1 single in July of '71 with Indian Reservation, but that was intended as a solo single. So how did the song come about? The recording process, the writing process of it was from John Loudermilk was the writer, but how did that come about? And then at what point did you decide well, let's release this under the guise of the Raiders as opposed to doing it as a solo single.
Well, Jack Gold, who was head of A&R for the West Coast CBS, called me into his office, and we'd had a nice record with Arizona, big gold record, and he said, "I've got your follow-up." And I said, "Okay, let's hear it." So he played "In the Reservation," and I said, "Well, gee, Jack, I know this for the song. Don Farden had it out a few months ago, but it did nothing, and I don't think it made it into the top 50." And I said, "I'm not sure that it's right." He said, "Well," he said, "it's pretty big in England right now." He said, "Aren't you part Native American?" I said, "Well, yeah, I have some, an eighth, I guess." He said, "A Cherokee," and he said, "Well, look, that's perfect." He said, "I think you can pull this off." He said, "Right now, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee is #1 on the New York Times best-selling list, and I think this record can happen." I said, "Well, I'm not sure." He said, "Well, look, let's cut it. I want you to do it." So I went to my producer, Jerry Fuller, who's also, as a matter of fact, Gary Puckett's producer, and I said, "Look, Jerry, I want to cut this song." He said, "I can't. I'm in the middle of 3 projects. I don't have time." Went back to told that to Jack. He said, "Well, then you produce it." And I'd been producing the Raiders, but I never produced myself because it was hard to be objective when you're actually producing yourself. He said, "Look, Jerry can't do it. You have to do it. So get in there and do it." So I called my friend Artie Butler, who played on Feeling All Right, Joe Cocker, a lot of stuff, and said, "Well, I'm going to do this song." So he did the basic arrangement with all studio cats, and we cut it, finished it, and when we were finished with it, I loved it. I thought it was incredible. I loved the production. I loved the way everything came out, but I was so close to it, I wasn't sure whether it was, I thought this is either going to be the biggest song we ever had or the biggest stiff we ever had. And before that, I could usually call a chart position when we, released a record. I could say, okay, that's going to be like top 20, 25, 35, whatever. I could call it within 5 points either way, usually. But in the Reservation, I had no idea, and I kept dragging my feet and vacillating. And Jack said, "Come on, we got to get this out." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure." He said, "Look," he said, "if you don't want to release it as Mark Lindsay, let's release it as the Raiders." And I said, "Okay, fine," because that kind of took the pressure off. Well, we put it out, and of course, it became the biggest selling single in the history of 45s on CBS Records, and also the biggest record that the Raiders never played on, because it was destined supposedly to be a Mark Lindsay single, so it was all the studio guys. But it turned out well, and as I say, it was the biggest selling single in the history of the company for almost 10 years, until Michael Jackson came along with Billie Jean.
Any particular reason why it was just credited to the Raiders as opposed to Paul Revere and the Raiders?
Well, about that time, we had changed the name from Paul Revere and the Raiders to Raiders. It was, times were changing, and we were trying to keep up with the times. So I went to Clive Davis and said, "Look, let's change the name of the Raiders." And I talked to Paul about this and got his agreement, of course. And so let's change it from Paul Revere and the Raiders just to Raiders, because Paul Revere and the Raiders sounds more like Billy J and the Kramer and the Dakotas, rather. So let's just make it streamlined to call it Raiders. He said, "Well, let's call it Mark Lindsay and the Raiders." I just said, "No." I said, "I can't, go to Paul and say, they're going to take your name off and put mine on." So we changed it to Raiders, and it was, that was the official name of the band at the time we released the record, so that's why the name Raiders was on it. And then after that didn't seem to work too much, so they went back to Paul Revere and the Raiders. But that's why just the name Raiders was on it.
Interesting. We're talking with Mark Lindsay. Before we wrap up, before your show coming up Sunday, quickly, you had an album out in 2013 called Life Out Loud. Do you have any plans to write or record any more new music in the near future?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm leaving. Well, I'm in Maine right now, where we live, but I'm leaving tomorrow for New Jersey, for my friend has a wonderful studio there, and that's where we cut Life Out Loud, as a matter of fact. And I'm starting another project, so we'll be rehearsing and recording and starting a new project, and who knows where it'll go.
It should be fascinating, something to look forward to, and looking forward to Sunday. 2 concerts. Is it going to be the same show both times, or are you mixing it up for the 3:30 and the 7:30?
It'll be pretty much the same show. We can switch things around, but I don't think, hopefully after seeing 2 hours plus of Gary and me, they'll be satisfied. But if they want to come back, great. We'd love to see them.
A couple opportunities. Once again, thank you very much. Mark Lindsay performing Ho-Chunk Gaming, Black River Falls, this Sunday, 3:30 and 7:30. Once again, thanks, and welcome back to Western Wisconsin this weekend.
Well, thank you so much. And if they have some cheese curds, I don't know whether they have any at the casino or not, but if they have them, I'll try them again.
We'll make sure to get them for you. All right, thank you much, and take care, Mark.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.